What we're really going to talk about here today is how dispensationalism creates a salvation of works, although they, insist that that isn't the case. But here's the deal. If you ask a dispensationalist, what must I do to be saved? They will give you a list of works. Well, you must say the sinner's prayer. You must believe. You must receive. Or, you must have faith. All of these are works. And so you must do this work in order to be saved. Well, how does that line up? It's like we were saved by grace. See, Jude tells us that there has been wicked men that have crept in and changed the grace of our God to lasciviousness or lewdness. And if it was changed back then in Jude's day, and if that was an issue back then, how much more so has that had the opportunity to refine itself? And, if it was a problem then, how much more refined is that today? For Jude tells us that we must earnestly contend for what was first taught. And Jude was a disciple of Jesus. Therefore, what was first taught was through Jesus. Of course, dispensationalists tell us that only Paul had the dispensation of grace. What is a dispensation? A dispensation comes from the root word to dispense, to give out. That's where we get dispensaries. In the military, you have the dispensary where they give out the articles of gear. In the hospitals, they give out they have a dispensary where they give out the medicine. And it's, a locked in area so that people don't go in there and just take whatever they want. So often, many versions of the scripture use the word stewardship rather than dispensation, because a dispensation is a stewardship that has been given to an individual to dispense to others. It's a calling, is what it is. Everybody has a calling. What is your calling? That is your dispensation, what you've been given to dispense. Paul had the dispensation of grace. He was giving out the message of grace. However, we need to understand what message that is, because Jude tells us wicked men have crept in and changed the grace of our God to lewdness or lasciviousness. If you look at it as we have, examples of what that lewdness is. Lewdness is, you can get away with sin. You can, that's what lasciviousness is often, preached, that it is the license to sin. So one of the examples we have is the song by Mercy Me. It's called Grace Got You. The lyrics are, smile like you got away with something. Why? Because you got away with something. Grace got you. And see, that has absolutely nothing to do with grace as far as, it shows God turning a blind eye to sin. Rather, if you look at Scripture, every single message that is given concerning grace, when grace is applied, sin is absent. So, grace, no sin. It's not a grace is applied and therefore God turns a blind eye to sin. No, grace is the empowerment to overcome. That's why we are saved by grace through faith. Because see, if you're still stuck in the rut of sin, you are not saved from it. If you're still in this sin, there is no grace being applied. See, we know that when we're tested and tried, that, we may not make it. So we are to boldly go before the throne of grace and obtain grace for that time of need. That's, a message that James taught. James also taught grace. It's not just a Paul's message. We're told Jesus taught it. We're told James taught it. Okay, so if you look at the proper definition of grace, which is the empowerment to overcome, the ability and the will to do God's will, then you understand that grace empowers us to do the work. Without grace, we cannot believe. Without grace, we cannot receive. We cannot say the sinner's prayer. We cannot, give our lives to the Lord without that grace that empowers us to do the work. See, faith without works is dead. Grace is what empowers us to do the work. That's why, we're told, show me your faith by your works. Because, see, if you don't have any works, then you have no empowerment in your life to do them. You have no grace in your life to actually accomplish the works. Okay, so the bottom line is that dispensationalism teaches a salvation of works. The work that you have to believe. You have to receive. You have to do the sinner's prayer. It's not the grace that empowers you, which is why you cannot boast, because you have no grace within yourself. You have no ability to do the work without that grace to cause you to do so. Okay? So it's very important to understand what grace is and what the false grace is that is so prevalent in the world today that Jude warned us about. Alright? I hope this was helpful. Take care.